I will hand over to Rama Gheerawo, who is Deputy Director of the Helen Hamlin Centre for Design, and he is leading the centre's Age and Ability Research Lab. So I'll hand over now.
Great, thank you very much. You're already clapping and I haven't done anything yet. Good sign. It's a great privilege to be here and to chair this session. When I saw the title Superhuman, I bit off Cassie and Amanda's arm to really chair it, because I think not only is the subject interesting, but we have 4 great speakers lined up. Just to kind of get us in the mood post-lunch, we're really looking at how technology relates to the body and how it can be used to extend notions of the body, whether that is technology around the body, on the body, or in the body. And I think we have some interesting, some challenging, some nuanced perspectives that are coming up. We do have 4 speakers today. We're going to ask them to keep as closely to time as possible, if not bang on time. So we have some time for questions. So please prepare your questions, your thoughts, your comments. We should have some time for them afterwards. I must confess I nearly created my own bit of wearable technology yesterday when I was so proud of super gluing a domestic appliance back together. I reached for my BlackBerry to take a photograph and nearly became one with it. So that's my own interpretation. If I could ask the first speaker to get ready to come up. We're going to do this in alphabetical order. We have Ghislaine Boddington, who is an artist, researcher, a dramaturge, that was a new word for me, specializing in body-responsive technologies. And she is one of the pioneers of telepresence. I'm not going to go through her whole CV, but just enough to say that she's really interested in looking at human senses through digital transmission and reception of body data, such as touch, motion, biofeedback, and gesture. So we may expect you to do a little bit more than talk when you get up here. For the other speakers, I'll leave you a choice. We can. It's probably better for you to sit in the front row and actually see what each other are talking about, and then I will invite you all to the stage afterwards. Does that sound like a plan? Great. Ghislaine, over to you.
Thank you. Great. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think it's really exciting this event's taking place, and I've been buzzing about it. So yes, I'm Ghislaine Boddington, and I'm Creative Director of Body Data Space, and I'm also linked to Middlesex University for the last 15 years, who've supported this research work that I've been doing. So Body Data Space, we're a design unit. We're based in the East End of London, and we've been around since about 2005. And we emerged from a digital pioneer group called Shinkansen, which started in 1989 and worked with movement and sound research, so technology links to sound and movement-based projects throughout the 90s in Britain and on an EU scale. And we actually are a group of about 16 who work together on and off, depending on the size of the project, coming from performance, architecture, new media, virtual worlds. And we have a focus on collaboration and cooperation, interauthorship, and a particular focus on connectivity and mobility. And this is our mission statement. This is a set of words we've been working with for many years, actually even from Shinkansen through. So you can see the connections there are. And the name, of course, body to data to space is quite obvious. We put the body at the center of digital interaction, and we're looking at the data that's coming from it and dealing with virtual and physical space. So as was mentioned, my key expertise is telepresence. And I've been working with telepresence since mid-90s, really. I'm coming from a dance background. So someone said earlier of a range of different diverse backgrounds that come into this wearable sector, and it is interesting. And for me, the connectivity side of linking bodies, full body, remote space connections, has very much been a focus because I'm working on identity and intercultural relationships throughout my career. And I've been very important in a dance context where we do work in groups to actually find ways to link up and to work together. So this communication, this full body interface, has become the key interface that I've looked at, gestural and behavioural experimentations, and looking at how we communicate in that way through the virtual and the physical and virtual blend into the future. I also have to admit that actually from a very young age, probably with many others in this room, I have been slightly obsessed with the beam me up Scotty need, yeah. So when it got to the kind of early 90s and I, finally realised this was not going to happen in that way, for me the telepresence connection was one way that we could make this happen between us. So working across Europe and with many groups, we created projects which enabled us to link up between studios, between theatres, clubs, festivals, etc. And often wearables were involved in this. So we're using internet connection to link the spaces, but also adding in at various points. I mean, the picture at the moment, Vesna, the dancer there, is working with her own image, and this is through actually using FaceTime on stage. So often using different wearables. And in that work, really trying to concentrate on looking at the behaviours that we actually have when we're actually working together through mediated space, looking at how we navigate and orientate ourselves in this new virtual physical blur, and also very much looking at how we get to a more intimate, more touch-based environment and become more teleintuitive within that space. So in 2002 to 4, Shinkansen, the collective that was started in 1989, actually did a large-scale project called Future Physical, which took place throughout East England and which had 4 strands in it. It looked at biotechnologies, eco-technologies, wearable computing, and in responsive spaces. And we were able to commission during that time a number, about 25 projects, but many actually did involve wearables of some type. So this first picture here, which is with the jacket, which we've seen a few of this morning already, is Yakov Sharir, who's a dance choreographer based in Austin, Texas, who's been working with Sony, with many other big companies actually on wearable computing since the mid-90s, putting on-body devices to actually control the stage space, cyborgs, sound, visuals of all types within dance theatre works. And we worked with him, and we worked with several other artists, Foam and Sponge, and Rachel Wingfield. And these other 2 pictures are from a project called Took Zoom, which took place in the circus space in Great Yarmouth, a large-scale installation where the audience actually put on wearables of different types, using biofeedback, using costumes of different types to actually move within the circus space. Wonderful project. Another project at that time was by Tekla Schripost and Susan Cazell, a piece called Whisper, which actually used biofeedback, breath and heartbeat to actually create visualizations and sonifications. And through jackets, they were able to click into each other and create joint pools of visuals and sound, which actually very beautiful, very magical experience. And this was part of one of the main Future Physical commissions too. And other commissions which involved wearables which actually created content for the work when it finally became made. So Masaki Fujihata, major interactive artist, Arts Electronica Prize winner, who works with GPS systems, and we did a large-scale project with him on Mersey Island, working with about 150 public, collecting video and GPS data to make a large 3D media installation. Now, because I'm coming from dance background and performance background, obviously our focus is very much on liveness and not losing, trying to retain as much of the live connectivity as we can. And these are key words in experiential liveness that all of us in performance studies learn from our baseline training. We learn about presence and absence. We learn about shifting perception through performance, about intimacy, about the involvement and the interaction and how you draw in your audience to it. So obviously relative to the participant or the spectator, whether you're actually doing the stuff on stage or whether you're a public participating within installation work, these are key elements that we try to hold on to in our work. Additionally, we're working and have always been working as a collective in a network collaborations, and we have quite key methodologies within that. So these convergent rings of interaction which enable us to participate, which enable us to enact together in a kind of more flattened hierarchical way, but actually enabling an emergent dynamic to come through networked interaction, I think link more and more into today's possibilities for wearables in that connectivity communication world. Now, the hypersensory self is one of our key diagrams that we use, looking at the data that now we all know can come from the body. We can transmit from the body data which actually is linked to all of these different types of areas. And we particularly focus in our group on biofeedback, on motion capture, proprioceptive, and on the emotion and haptic and feel side. But of course there are other artists here in this room and people all over the world who are focusing on different areas here. Taste and smell is an area that's coming through very strongly. So if we take those transmissions that we can do from the body and we actually look at also what we can receive back, what we are interested in is a shared architecture which comes into the middle of this space. And this shared architecture, from you as an individual sharing your data into the center and many others joining into that, is the space where we can choose to have an I space or a we space. The I is when you're holding information to yourself, or you're sharing it perhaps with one or two others, friends, family, your doctor, if it's a biofeedback situation. The we space when you allow that information to be shared by many and everybody to be gathering it. And there are many examples of this type of collaborative share space that we all use every day now. And I think some of the presentations this morning showed these up, the Foursquare examples, etc. So. Now, one of the areas that also we're really aware of, and which is still, I think, a really big question, is how we deal in the future with this whole area of mobility, with our smartphones, being able to go everywhere with them. It's for us. We can share a bit. We can show it to a person next to us. We can share it with 3 people. But actually, it's very much a personalized small glass piece in your pocket. And immersion, which is, in a way, the complex oppositional side to it. How do we actually start to enable space where we can immerse ourselves as groups within environments, within data, which we want to share, which we want to be part of together? And we do know, actually, that there's been quite a rise in the use of domes, immersion spaces. And I keep an eye on this for many years, actually. And I'm really pleased to see now, in the last few years, there's a lot of educational science, ecology festivals, which are using domes. And these domes are happening all over the world. Motion capture, on the other hand, is really still quite complex. And if we go into large-scale motion capture work, we've done a lot with motion capture with gypsy outfits on. This is not publicly accessible. It's not something we can dress everybody up and put them in this gear. It restricts movement. It's hard to work with. So in an environment where we're looking at is a collective collaboration between the face-to-face engagement, the telepresence, the avatars and virtual worlds work, and the wearables and robotics, implants and prosthetics of today, with an add-on of artificial intelligence coming our way quite fast, how do we actually start to create a future which enables us to share in those collective spaces? So our work in the last few years has focused more on gesture and looking at gesture technologies, which we're so happy to have available. Connect, obviously, I'm sure many of you in the room are starting to work with the Connect system. And other systems which are just starting to come out. This is the Maya, which is a gesture sensor. I don't think it's released yet, but everyone's waiting for it. A muscle reactor, which will allow us to, it's worth watching on YouTube, this video, allows you to move drones around, to move tractors around, to do many things with different objects, which you have a connectivity with through your muscle and arm situation. Gesture systems are very much part of our everyday lives and always have been. They're very big in dance, mime, theatre. Ballet has a whole series of gestures. Any dance, mime or theatre which is telling stories has got gestures in it. But actually, if you look at other people's jobs, there's many gestures that are used in emergency services, in sports and games, obviously sign language, working with deaf artists. We do quite a lot of work in the deaf artist area, in gaming. So they are very much part of our lives, and they're things which actually are not so hard to become part of a group memory and a mass collective movement. So if certain gestures start to become necessary, we know we start to do them. And we know that even babies now are doing the swipe movement immediately, even on pages of magazines, because they've been on iPad too much, even since they were 1 month old or whatever. So the collective shift of gestures through mass groups is amazing. And we've done quite a lot of tests on this in Clubland, where we can set off small gestures on club floors amongst 10 or 12 of us and literally watch them ripple as people subconsciously copy through rooms of gesturing. So our last piece that I wanted to show you... Oh, I've gone the wrong way, actually, haven't I? Oh, no. There, good. The piece I want to show, the most recent work that we've done, is a convergence piece using telepresence, our baseline knowledge, a virtual world, motion capture using Connect, so not having to have the heavy wearable situation on us, and human gesturing. Me and My Shadow actually premiered last year at the National Theatre. It was a piece created with EU funding between 7 or 8 co-producers across Europe, and actually is a direct communication interaction technology which linked up 4 cities, London, Istanbul, Brussels, and Paris. It's multi-locational, therefore. It uses a full body representation, and it is absolutely wireless, and your body is completely free of all wearables. So in a sense, for me, it's been one of those key aims, although I've worked so much with wearables, is actually how do we get to a point where we are freeform, where we are actually in our natural state, using natural gesturing, and actually connecting and communicating with each other. So I'll show you a little bit of video of this now. And sound. So you see in here the virtual world, you see the different avatars moving around. Now, I could talk about this piece for ages, but I am here and people can ask me questions later about it. It's been a very amazing piece to work on and quite unique in its reaction, quite magic. And I think for us, one of the areas that we're really interested in and looking at the future is actually how do we represent ourselves and have representation of ourselves and others within an open, immersive environment where you are physically free, when you're moving future-wise in a very natural way. And here is a picture of one of our dancers working with her own avatar. And we always keep in mind the kind of Philip Pullman demon in the Golden Compass, in that series, where you've got something else with you, which is doing things for you, bringing stuff to you. And that's a future that we are still playing with a lot. Secondly, telepresence robots, where you put yourself out, so you represent yourself out into something which is mobile. So these 2 different ways of looking at how you are out there in the world in a very different way than the physical presence. So just to finish quickly, the other area that I think we would feel is definitely coming through, and many people in this room may be working on it. An example is crash dummies, where we start to put data together from 3 or 4 different sources. The old-fashioned crash dummy model we all recognize at the top from seeing it often on television. You know, physical dummies which are thrown around in cars to get data from the sensors on them. The virtual renditions, which they use alongside this now, the data that comes into that. And additionally, a lot of biofeedback data being gathered from real drivers who are actually moving around in their normal daily lives, and they're gathering data. And these 3 sets of data being put together to find out results for us, which help improve our lives, improve behavior, and probably here, the main aim, obviously, is completely to save lives, yeah? So that's just one example of how we see so much coming together from these different data collecting possibilities from the body and wearables. So, convergence of live presence and telepresence, avatars and virtual worlds, robotics, wearables, gesture sense tech, enabling co-creation, and actually in that collaborative share space is where we're really interested. So the next thing, of course, is the content in there, and that's where we think there's got to be a lot more work. We can all work on the wearables, we can all work on what we can send from the body, but we need to develop the content, which is really important for us all, and which is allowing us to put across the things that we believe in the world and to shift behaviours in the most positive ways. So thank you for that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ghislaine. I think it's very interesting when you have someone who is trained in one discipline working across many other disciplines. You get a great cross-fertilization. Particularly interested in gestures, because when my bus broke down on the way here, there were a number of gestures on that bus, I can tell you. We move very quickly on to our next speaker. And speakers, if I can remind you, there's a lovely person in the corner here who will signal timing to you. I will also wave at you when you have 2 minutes left, just to give you a little bit of a warning to wrap up. I do want to open the session to audience question and feedback. So we move into the next presentation, which is for Pauline van Dongen. Pauline graduated from the Academy of Arts in Arnhem in the Netherlands and started her own women's wear label in 2010. She's particularly interested in the behavior of experimental and high-tech materials and working in that space triangulated by fashion, technology and science. Pauline, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Let me start right away. My name is Pauline van Dongen. I'm a fashion designer from the Netherlands. After graduating from my master's in 2010, I founded my own women's wear label. And over the past 3 years, I've been specializing in the combination of fashion and technology. I've recently started a PhD research at the Technical University in Eindhoven. And this research is part of a bigger program, which is called Crafting Wearables. And it's connecting different partners in the field of fashion and technology. My inspiration comes from the observation of our contemporary surroundings, which have become liquid under the influence of technology. And I'm interested in the relationship between the body and space, the way we perceive the world around us and how we interact with it. Also the way technology on our body can extend senses and perception and how it becomes an interface. Our lives are permeated by a technologically textured world in a process of mimesis. So my work deals with the incorporation of what's outside towards the inside, the embodiment of technology. An example is this jacket named Mesopic. It's a project I've done recently in collaboration with Philips. And they've provided me with their LED textile ribbons, which I integrated in this jacket, which allows for visibility at night. And through its glowing effect and the reflection of the light onto the body, it's merging with its surroundings, which connects with this idea of mimesis, the representation of our constructed environment. Another example showing how technology can express the movement and fluidity of our surroundings is the flip-dot dress. It's an interactive garment which is responsive to sound, and it's capable of altering the topography of the human body. 600 small electromagnetic dots animate swirling patterns around the body. I'll show you a quick video of that. Can we have some sound? if you listen carefully, you can hear this kind of whispering sound, which is the actual sound they're making. And I think it's really fascinating, this kind of physical presence that they have, which often, nowadays, digital technology often lacks. So my vision is based on the idea of naturalizing technology, because there is nothing natural in nature. Technology is, in fact, what makes us human. So by using new materials and new technologies, I constantly try to innovate craftsmanship. So in fact, you could say that I use technology as a materia prima. And my aim is to integrate technology in a truly wearable way, without compromising the design aspect. And as a result, these designs can transcend the realm of gadgets. And I would like to illustrate this with my project Wearable Solar. It's an investigation in the use of solar cells in fashion. Because all these new qualities and functionalities that we're implementing in our wearables and in our garments, they require a continuous energy supply by batteries. And this project shows how by augmenting a garment with solar cells, the body can become an actual source of energy. So for this dress, 72 flexible solar cells have been incorporated into different panels in the body. They're worn close to the body, actually. In the solar coat, this one incorporates 48 crystalline solar cells, which are more rigid. And the wearer can actually decide whether to reveal the panels when the sun shines or to hide them and wear them invisibly as a kind of potentiality. And both prototypes, when worn in full sun for an hour, can generate enough energy to power a typical smartphone for 50%. So to conclude, I'd like to show you another video showing you the process of this project and also showing you the partners that I collaborated with.
I work for a program called Gelderland Valoriseert, which is aimed at speeding up innovations in the area of sustainable energy. I came up with this idea because I'm a great fan of music festivals, and the phone is becoming more and more important to experience festivals like this, because you want to know where your friends are. You want to know the layout of the festival and of course the agenda, where are my favorite bands playing. So the next step for me was to find people who could help me realize this idea. So this was on the one hand a fashion designer, Pauline van Dongen. She specialized in wearable technology.
Well, I'm involved in Wearable Solar because I'm fascinated by the potential energy of the sun. And also the fact that when you wear solar cells on your body, you can be an energy source.
On the other hand, Gert-Jan Jongeren, who specialized in solar cells. And we've also worked together with a few students from the University of Applied Science, Arnhem Nijmegen, who are specialized in product design.
I worked as a physicist in AkzoNobel as head of a research department, and I became involved in a project to develop flexible solar cells, together with universities. The potential of solar energy is incredible. In 1 hour, the sun irradiates enough energy on our planet for whole mankind.
We looked at all the layers within the solar cell and also compared this kind of stratification with the human skin, which is also very layered. And this idea of layers I translated into my design, and also combined with a modular element where you could open up certain shapes to show the panels and to charge and also put them back in when you don't need them. The most difficult thing was to seamlessly integrate these panels into the design, because you still want to be able to reach them, because you need to make the whole circuit, you want to repair stuff maybe. It's a whole different thing compared to sewing a normal garment.
The key of wearable solar is to find an optimal match between wearability and the amount of energy the solar cells can produce.
In order to improve the integration of solar cells, I think the structural rigidity and the efficiencies should be explored.
If you look at a solar panel system on a house, it's mounted with structures. You can't do that on clothing. The ideal wearable portable solar cell would be a piece of textile. However, that exists in the lab, but not is yet a sellable product.
We've organized a workshop during the Fashion Biennale in Arnhem to interact with a few financing people, venture capitalists, entrepreneurs, business developers, to help us with the next step, which is commercializing this idea.
It's a long road to travel still, but I think through a lot of research and development, we can get to a marketable product.
So in case you're curious to see them, they are actually exhibited right in the front of the building, and that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline, and I would encourage you to go and have a look at the exhibit. We move on to our third speaker, Nancy, who is actually a graduate from Ravensbourne, so something for the home team here. She also graduated from the Royal College of Art, so I give you my own personal little chair there. She then went on to work at Philips and really helped to establish this wearable tech research direction that they underwent. She's now working at Studio X0, or XO, as you wish. Easy. We like that, inclusive. And one of the most amazing things that she did was work on Lady Gaga's flying dress, or the dress that she was wearing when she was flying. I know Lady Gaga's dresses seem to fly off at regular intervals, but that's another thing. So Nancy, please do come up and give us your presentation.
So, yeah, I graduated from Ravensbourne a very long time ago when it was in Elmstead Woods. And it was whilst I was there, actually, I became fascinated with the relationship between the body and technology. And that continued my time at the Royal College when, in '97, I was fortunate enough to meet some very clever people who were working at Philips Research, and they were intrigued by the work I was doing in fashion technology at the time. And collectively, we set up what is known, I suppose, now as Wearable Technology Group. And we had the pleasure of working over the years with people at Nike and Levi's. So we did very early on, did some very commercial projects, and some of our friends are in the audience. So if people have got questions about the history of wearable tech, we can bore you to death. But today I'm going to talk a bit about Studio XO. So we've built, basically we're a fashion brand. We just happen to use technology. And that's where we're really, really focused on building a fashion brand, a commercial brand for the future. Predominantly we work now on couture technologies. So I'm going to, if you'll let me. Nope. Sorry. Yeah, predominantly we're working on couture technologies at the moment, but behind the scenes we're developing a platform for ready-to-wear and also building a very interesting fan platform. So with the pleasure of working with people like the Black Eyed Peas and Gaga and so on, it gives you access, and our fans are really quite amazing. You know, we're getting constant feedback, and okay, thanks. So we built a fashion laboratory in London. That's really key. So a critical mass of people who are developing our commercial product. And there we have coders working alongside fashion designers, materiologists and technologists working hand in hand. And that is really, really key. It's an integrated process. We're not a traditional fashion house with me at the fore or the big name. It very much is about this critical mass to create the fashion products of the future. And like many people have talked about, we are really interested in the intimate and emotional. So there's a ton of stuff that's been going on in wearable tech in the last 5 years in health and fitness. Brilliant. worked on some fantastic projects whilst I was at Philips in health and fitness. But I think it's this space, you know, with Generation Digital, and it's not that I'm not interested in the ageing population, et cetera, but you know, our gaze is on somebody who's 13, who's interacting with technologies in ways that we can't even imagine. So my kids are constantly asking me, why isn't this surface alive, mummy? What's happening? What's going on? And I think it's that intimate, emotional relationship that we have both with the products around us and those technologies. And as they become fashion, I think emotion is really, really, really key. And I'm sure the topic today has very much been about the physical and digital. So I've fought that war for a long, long, long time, having graduated from here in '95. And at Philips, we kind of got eclipsed, you know. We've got this beautiful thing called a smartphone now in our pocket, this lovely piece of computation we carry around. But at the time, we were almost trying to reinvent the wheel. So we went through multiple processes that taught us kind of how not to do wearable tech. But now we've got the smartphone, you know, on body, and it's about to allegedly move to the wrist, as Apple are telling us. This distributed interface is going to come alive again, and I feel a company, a brand like ours, really wants to be at the fore of this physical digital revolution, and that's the kind of heart and soul of what we're doing, is thinking about the role that the wardrobe will play as the Internet of Things comes very much alive in the course of the next few years. And because of the topic we're talking about today, I wanted to focus in on our couture work, because this is what we're most known for at the moment, and I'm going to talk about some of those projects. But our methodology, how do we work? How do you work in a fashion laboratory? So we're really, really, really interested in science fiction. Obviously, I think everybody in the room is. And I'm absolutely obsessed with Jeff Noon, and I have been since I was here at Ravensbourne. And he's most recently written a book called Channel Skin. Brilliant. I encourage you all to go and buy it and read it. And we were asked recently to write a monthly blog for the Huffington Post, which we're going to be doing in fashion technology. So, and this was our kind of opening statement to the blog, and it's an excerpt from Jeff Noon's brilliant new book. So, my body is a receiver. I am an aerial picking up signals, a physical screen of skin. Biodub was being played from her skin. Electric blood was running through her, colours swirling across her flesh. And this is something, you know, when we start the process, we're more obsessed with what's going on in 50 years. So we're constantly trying to imagine a world that we can't yet see, you know, feel the impossible and make that possible, and ultimately make our skins digital. And so how do we do that? I believe by making science fiction science fact. And, you know, so at the moment, we're obsessing, as I've said, about building a fashion brand for the future human. And what does that look like? Well, how are you going to disrupt fashion? Well, in a curious way, and I'm not going to give away all my secrets today, but building these couture experiences, getting to work with heroes. So for years and years and years, we've all been incubating these kinds of ideas in the lab. Now we're able to work with certain types of celebrities who have a big critical mass. So Lady Gaga has 60 million likes on Facebook. She has 40 million followers on Twitter. That's access to fashion technology. So all of a sudden, we're coming alive. And the couture experience is so key because the fan is engaging with it, and we're creating a ton of fan connectivity. And that's how we're able to build a future fashion brand. And in the center, this is the bit that we're focusing in on. So what will ready-to-wear interactions be like? Will that be Gucci? Will it be Philips? Or will it be a new brand of the future? And we hope it's the latter. And amongst all of this, there's a big conversation about data. Data. And I think it's not necessarily about big data, it's about intimate data. And anyone that wants to take that debate up will have to do that in more than 10 minutes. So I'm going to show you some of the projects that I've been part of and that we're doing at EXO over the years. So this is my favourite fable, the blushing dress. So many of you in this room have probably seen this, and there's lots of stories about how this dress came about. It's a beautiful piece of work that we're very proud of because it goes all the way back to 1999, and we thought this up whilst we were at Philips Research Labs, and we weren't fortunate enough to get the probes work that we were doing at Philips, which is about thinking up these kind of far futures research concepts and realising them to agitate and almost irritate the brand that we were working for at the time. And inside of here is a sensor that measures your levels of arousal, and the exterior of the dress blushes. And I'm not saying that anybody's going to wear their heart on their sleeve, but certainly at that time in 2006, we were very, very interested about moving from the intelligent to the sensitive. And I still think we're in that space, and lots of people have been talking about that today. This is a more current project that we've done out of our studio, which is designed by data. So we've just designed the costumes for Atomos, which is Wayne McGregor, who is one of our leading British choreographers in the country. Atomos is up for a South Bank Award, so we're all very, very, very excited about that. Different piece of fashion technology. I think people assume that it has to be components embedded in clothes. Highly disagree. It's about navigating the machines of the future, thinking about data, and then thinking about the integration of the technology. And this project, we've built our own very personal sensor, and we use that. We embedded it on ourselves, on Wayne, on the dancers, created very interesting 360 loops where we drew the data out, and we quite literally designed by data. It's on the surface, embedded at the surface of the garments, quite simply in the print. But the story, the narrative behind it starts to build an understanding of what fashion technology can be. So this is our most recent work, and I'm sorry I'm trying to go very, very fast because I'm conscious that we've got to speed up a bit. So here we have XO, future fashion brand, and how do you get that outreach? So we have been working now for just under a year with Lady Gaga. Absolute pleasure, one of the most brilliant minds in the world, and it has led us to set something up called Tech House with her, which is her technical division of the House of Gaga. And this is some of the work that we've been doing. So we've done multiple projects, but these are the big reveals. These are the ones that we've done that have got lots and lots, millions and millions and millions of hits, lots of PR. And what you start to see is a relationship. So we have a curiosity from the fashion industry that's emerging. They're starting to understand through this type of work what wearable fashion and technology might actually mean. And, you know, of course, it has a very playful element. Many years ago, she wore Hussein Chailan's bubble dress that was physical bubbles. And we talked about, because of the work that we've done in digital skins, and some of you may have seen the project work that we've done there, how we could create these kind of ephemeral textiles, these surfaces that could grow around her and almost touch her fans at a distance. And bubbles seemed like a really beautiful way of doing that. You know, it had a fun element. Lots of people referred to us as the Willy Wonkas of fashion coming. And last, the most recent, we made Lady Gaga fly. So I could tell you lots and lots and lots and lots about how we did it, but ultimately we talked about how could we create a flying dress and what would it mean if we could make, you know, somebody fly in their clothes. And this is our very first attempt. She's a fawn, and we're working with her constantly to build her up to be something quite significant. And we really believe in this kind of work, and we can really see, this gives us a glimpse into the future, the relationship between fashion and future travel and so on and so forth. And yeah, so I hope that has in some way been interesting, and we're Studio XO. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nancy. We move on to the final presentation of the session, Ling Tang. Ling is an architect, designer, and artist, many things. Born in Singapore, but graduated from the UCL Bartlett just across the way. She's a researcher in this space, but focuses on the limits of human bearability and the ethical implication of devices on their users and the interaction. She's also a designer at Umbrellium. Ling, please tell us about your work.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Ling Tan. So I'm an architect by training, but I also work as a graphic designer, and I'm an avid fan of sci-fi stories, as everyone is. So from young, I've always been interested in the notion of reality and how the idea of reality gets shaped by media, pervasive media or not, but also by the way products is packaged around us and how it influences how the environment is created. Essentially how it empowers, it shapes human behavior and how it empowers the human to transform our city and the way we view it. So my research is based more on the implication of technological processes and its impact on the user and their interaction with the built environment, having come from an architectural background. So theoretically, prosthesis is defined as the extension of the body to supplement the deficiency. But as what Andy Clark talks about prosthesis, it also forms part of the extended condition when the reliable coupling system is achieved. So what is a reliable coupling system? So for example, we always carry phone with us every day, 24/7 for some of us. And we grew to be reliant on them, dependent on them for information. For example, I'm pretty sure most of you guys have to use GPS to navigate spaces if you are lost somewhere. So this kind of dependency formed this reliable coupling system between me as the user and the device itself. So we see technology advancing where phones start transforming into wearable technology such as the Google Glass, where it allows the user to navigate spaces where there's this dynamically changing visual information that is overlaid in front of the user's eyes. So what we call it is augmented reality, which traditionally refers to the overlaying of dynamically changing information to the user's senses, emphasizing more on the visual aspects of it. We can also see devices such as Nike Feel Band and Jawbone that make use of visual information for the user to track their body activities. We start moving on to speculative projects like Google Nose that was released during the April Fool time, where it talks about how there's this device which could be used to actuate on your nose and you could smell different kind of sensors based on the information you want. So then augmented reality move on to something which is larger, called mediated reality, which refers to this artificial modification of human perception by ways of devices used to deliberately enhance or alter our body senses. So we see a lot of people doing that nowadays. We see people like Steve Mann, artists like Steve Mann and Sterlach that starts to work on this kind of notion of mediated reality. So what I was interested in is mediated reality, but also the idea of how it goes skin deep and how this affects the limits of human bearability has been blurred by this kind of technology. So I was really interested in what makes a technological device more or less bearable, and also the type of criteria that allows this kind of coupling system to form between the user and the device. So the projects that I'm going to present today is part of the research that I did in UCL Interactive Lab. And this is one of the first project research that I did there. So it investigates the effects of mediated reality on user and the user's interaction with the environment. Essentially what this project makes up of is 3 experiments using different sensors and actuators. So it's really just essentially to question the idea of this kind of reality mediator, how the user change their everyday activity and how they navigate space. So in terms of the sensors, it's made out of a muscle sensor that could read the muscle activity level in the body, the brainwave device that could read the brain attention level, and the GPS board and the digital compass, which would track the location of the user in real time. The 3 sensors are connected separately to 4 different kinds of actuators. We have the muscle stimulation, which sends electrical stimulation to the arm. We have the sound actuator, which is attached to the back of the ear, which sends a beat tone to the user. And heat actuator, which induce sweating through the neck. And also another one, which is the vibration motor, which is attached to the hand, which directly disrupt the user's hand activity. So all these devices are 3D printed and packaged in a way where what I wanted to do is to intentionally design it in such a way that it mimics commercial products out there, commercial wearable products. And instruction manuals are created as well for the users to understand the step-by-step guide to how to wear this device and what effect you will be experiencing. So this is the video showing the model wearing the devices. So as you can see, all these are attached onto the body, and it is worn by the user for an extended period of 3 to 4 hours per device, because there's a total of 12 experiments that is running. So what I was really interested in is not so much the designing of it, but it's about how through this extended period of wearing, how do the user change their everyday activity. And because the actuators itself produces destructive effect in nature, so we could actually measure the level of obvious destructiveness to the user's activity. The thing about this is that because it's actually kind of destructive in nature, so I did the test on myself and some of my friends who kind of enjoy a bit of torture on them because it's kind of a bit painful for some. So for example, in one of the setup, the mind wave device is connected to the muscle electrical stimulation. So the idea is that when your brain attention level is high, the stimulation is off. But when your brain attention level is lower than average, the muscle stimulation will turn on and send electrical shock to your hand. So this kind of create this kind of interesting biofeedback loop where you don't know whether you should be alert, and this kind of affects the brainwave device reading your brain attention level as well. So on the more architectural side, the last set of experiment is using GPS sensing connected to the 4 different actuators. So what I was trying to understand from that set of experiment is whether could you understand body signal using non-visual sensors such as haptic or such as heat and electrical stimulation. So for example, the actuators is connected on the left, signals to the left direction, and the actuator which is connected to the front of the shoulder signals the front to move to the front. So using the GPS sensing, how do I navigate the space and whether I could get to my destination in the correct way. So this is the video showing the electrical stimulation, and you can see the subtle vibration on the arm, and it's connected to this kind of chunk of electronic stuff collecting data from Arduino. So one of the few of the interesting observations that I've collected from this set of projects is that, yes, you have the ability to adapt to this kind of device after a prolonged period of time. But the thing is that one of the interesting things about it is that the way the environment is perceived changes as the effect provides another layer of information on top of it. And also, you can't really adapt as much. For example, in one of the cases for the GPS sensing, because of the noise traffic and the cold weather in London, I couldn't really get the information from the heat actuator and from the sound actuator as much in very high noise traffic condition. So I think this is interesting because it kind of adds this complexity to the idea of how mediated reality could affect the user. So moving on from here, I wanted to just present this second part of reality mediator, which what I was interested in is really the ethical issue and the lifestyle implication of user having in contact with devices that talks, what I was trying to say is that because wearable companies usually tends to promote products that talks about user preferences, about how the device could actually read your everyday activity and understand you and try to provide you with benefits that they think that you should benefit from the device. So what I was interested in for this reality mediator tool is essentially the artificial intelligence nature behind this device, and also through prolonged usage, who is in control of the device, you or the device itself. So it's a very simple setup which is made out of 2 proximity sensor which is attached to the back of the body, and the proximity sensor could sense the distance of objects behind you itself. So it will be connected to Arduino, and a learning code will be run through this electronics. So what I was envisioning is that, so for example, for the first week of the experiment itself, I'll be wearing this and navigating the city with that. And I'll be changing the proximity sensor in relation to what activity I was doing at certain period of time. So for example, at night when it is dark and you need a sense of security more. So you could increase your proximity sensor so that when there's anyone moving behind you, you could actually be alerted by the vibration motor, which is attached onto your arm. So, so this is an ongoing research that I've been doing now, and I'm only at the first stage of prototype, and hopefully it will be out in the next year, coming months. And since I have only 1 minute, I would just like to end off with, I want to show you this project which I was also very interested in because it's a kind of a speculative sci-fi film that I was interested in making. It was inspired by Holofin. I don't know whether you guys heard of this sci-fi novella by Luke Kennard. So it talks about this device which could satisfy your every need. It talks about how it could alter your perception and could make you feel like home anywhere you want. But the thing about this is that it has to be embedded into your body, and this device will take on your DNA and grow within you and take on your body form. The idea is really questioning how much are you willing to let go of your body to allow this kind of device to satisfy your every need, and also the idea of how these actuators within it, the mini nano actuator starts moving within your body and attaching itself onto different body sensors, and how this device become commercial and become a commodity in the future, and how it moved from next generation to the next generation. So hopefully I will be able to show you guys this film when it's ready, probably next year. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Ling. Because we started a little late, we're going to just run over a little bit, and the organizers have accommodated for that. So could I ask our four presenters to run up on stage, find a seat with a microphone, and we are going to open for a Q&A session with the audience. So please prepare your questions or comments. Does anyone have anything they want to ask of the panel in general or a specific panel member? Was that a hand going up? Was it all perfectly clear? In that case, I'll ask a question. Taking chair's prerogative. You talked about, Nancy, you talked a little bit about the physical and digital war of the 90s. You know, what do you see being the kind of wars that need to be fought over the coming years, or do any wars need to be fought?
I think now we're in a phase where we need to really think about the commercialization of fashion and technology. So it's about building a bridge back to fashion. And yet there are lots of really interesting product design devices that are out there, but now, personally, I believe it's a vocabulary that needs to be shaped between our world and the fashion world. That's what's really key. That's king. That's what will take wearable tech to the next level.
So that's the new frontier.
I just think it's not necessarily the new frontier. It just is what needs to be, you know, is what will happen. It's what I believe in the course of the next 5 years. And beyond that, I think there's some very ethical questions around technology when we're talking about the superhuman that need to be worked out and talked about. And that will be, you know, the school that I was, you know, involved in the 90s, where, you know, it's the first time engineers and curious-looking people like me started working together. Now there is, you know, around the actual interior of the body and the kind of work that some of my peers that have been around for a long time, like Suzanne Lee, are doing, they face the further battle when they're looking at the bio and the body, which is, you know, a little bit further away than integrated technology in on and around our wardrobe.
Great, thank you. Anyone else from the panel want to come in on that? New developments?
I think it's really interesting hearing about bearability, because for us, I think that's kind of key, because we do need to be careful, I think, not to get rid or boundary off our senses, our peripheral vision, our movement abilities, etc., that we already have. And I think that the work you're doing may actually point out that quite clearly, to not stop the body being what it is already, because actually we've all said it, it's all about the enhancement of the body and the enhancement of the senses, developing more intimacy, etc. So it was really interesting seeing the presentation around bearability and actually what the limitations are that we would be prepared to go to. But even then, what are we adding to ourselves? So I think that still needs to be a lot of debate there for the everyday person.
I really agree with what Nancy just said. I think it's also very important that in this step of commercialization to look at how it connects with the fashion world, and actually also to see how the certain systems that are in place and the production of fashion, how it has to be altered for these wearables to be implemented and to make the step towards the market.
Do we have any questions from the audience? In that case, I just want to build on that, you know, and it's a question again for all panelists. I'm going to take those who haven't spoken first. But are we ready to be superhuman? You know, we were talking, science fiction came up a lot. And, you know, personally, I love projects like the last one that Ling showed that are experimental. But you know, what are those barriers to market, if you like? You know, are we ready to be superhuman? Is the consumer ready?
To be honest, I don't think there's such a thing as superhuman, because I think from the time where we were born, we were already superhumans. Because, I mean, if you think about 1960s when TV was domesticated, as in everyone has TV at home and all these things. So technology has always been with us all the time, and we can't really let go of technology at all, at any moment of time. So I think that we are already superhumans at this point. And it's really about whether are we really superhumans, like humans? Are we really humans, or we are not human anymore? So that's for me, but yeah.
And anyone else from the panel want to come in on that?
I think we want. Yes. I think there is an ambition at the moment with, you know, technology miniaturizing and becoming very intimate to the body more commercially. There are more commercial components. There is, you know, people are developing really complex code that can be embedded close to the body. So I think there is a really interesting debate around the course of the next 20 years and what that means to be human. And in some ways I agree and I disagree, because I'm raising young children who, you know, they're boundless in terms of what their relationship is to materials and the interface that they've grown up with, predominantly, you know, the iPad, this swipeability. They're looking at their clothes, they're looking at their body, saying, well, this is the final frontier. What's going on here? And I think there's an interesting debate that will take more than, you know, this moment to talk about, you know, what generation digital will be doing in the course of the next 20 years as they grow up, you know, with technology everywhere, with all these embedded surfaces and systems and living, you know, cohabiting with code.
Yes, the changing landscape is really one of these things that kind of informs us. We're almost, you know, chasing that rabbit. Anyone nurturing a question? Ah, gentleman at the front.
I've just asked it on Twitter, but I'll ask you...
Hey, let me give you a mic.
And the question is essentially, I mean, I'm not sure I believe in the idea of tacking on the commercialization question as an afterthought. It's fine to have projects that probe and provoke and explore issues, but you know, I don't think that necessarily sits simultaneously very well with questions about commercialization unless they're there at the beginning. The question, though, is will commercialization in this space require the emergence or the entry or Google or Microsoft or Apple or others and their monolithic ecosystems kind of consuming the space? Is that what commercialization is actually going to look like?
So I think we would just look for a quick response from one or two of the panelists. Who wants to jump in first? Ghislaine.
Probably like you, we all fear that is probably the route that it goes, but it would be really great to feel that, particularly through connectivity and communication, that we could start to actually create networks between friends, between family, but which are actually our own networks and which maybe we maintain control over. And that would be through any type of wearables. And I think the more natural and as Nancy was saying, just part of us, you know, to actually be able to do something on your dress, to be able to make life easier, actually. This is where it's got to go. It's actually, we all know we've got far too much to do. There's a lot of things every single day, and anything which can make life easier, to actually have more time to be personal with people, to be live with people and enhance our lives. And if we can do that through networking, which is outside of monolithic systems, I would be very grateful for that.
I also think some of those companies are struggling, you know, these big Borg-like organisations, having worked inside of Philips, and hopefully it will come from somebody who is able to disrupt those industries and bring something alternative and new based around the points that you're raising, you know, and that's what fascinates me very personally the most, is who's going to build that big disruptive fashion technology brand.
Great. Well, we've got to draw a line there, but I think one of my big takeaway from all of your presentations is that we seem to be moving forward incredibly well on 4 different fronts, whether it's technology that's near the body, next to the body, on the body, or even in the body. And really look forward to those developments, whether they're within the corporation or whether they're disruptive and outside of the corporation. I think it calls for new thinking, for novel approaches, and I think we saw plenty of that in your presentations. So a big round of applause for our 4 panelists. Thank you very much.